New footage that appears to show Hulk Hogan alive after his reported cardiac arrest is going viral, and it's making people question everything. Because let's be honest, Hogan's been caught in lies for decades.
Has anyone ever challenged Hulk Hogan face-to-face on camera with these specific lies?
No, I don't think so. It's why if I ever interviewed him, I would be the first. So it's like, all this bullshit that you've been making up for absolute decades.
With his wrestling promotion crashing and only 380 tickets sold, it's not hard to believe he was desperate. I've got the footage and all the details. Let's break it down. The shocking news that broke wrestling fans' hearts. The morning of July 24, 2025, started like any other ordinary day in Clearwater, Florida, where Terry Gene Bollea, the man the world knew as Hulk Hogan, resided in what many considered to be a well-deserved retirement from the physically demanding world of professional wrestling. But at exactly 9:51 a.m., emergency services received a call that would send shockwaves throughout the entire sports and entertainment industry. The call was for cardiac arrest, a medical emergency that would prove to be fatal for one of the most recognizable figures in popular culture. Emergency responders from Clearwater Fire and Rescue arrived on the scene and immediately began life-saving procedures, working tirelessly to revive the wrestling legend. The paramedics' efforts were captured on video footage that later emerged, showing them conducting chest compressions as they wheeled Hogan to the ambulance, a haunting image that would become one of the last visual records of the Hulkster's life. The race against time continued as emergency medical personnel transported Hogan to Morton Plant Hospital, where medical professionals fought valiantly to save his life. But despite their best efforts, despite the advanced medical equipment and the expertise of the hospital staff, Terry Bollea was pronounced dead at 11:17 a.m., marking the end of an era that had begun nearly 5 decades earlier when a young man from Georgia first stepped into a wrestling ring with dreams of making it big. The official confirmation came from Clearwater Police Major Nate Burnside, who held a press conference that would be watched by millions around the world. Standing before a sea of reporters and camera crews, Major Burnside delivered the news that wrestling fans had been dreading, but hoping against hope wouldn't be true.
My name's Nate Burnside. I'm a major with the Clearwater Police Department. The correct spelling of my first name is Nate. Last name is Burnside. I'm up here with Interim Deputy Chief John Klonfelter from the Clearwater Fire and Rescue. Just before 10 a.m. today, Clearwater Fire and Rescue, along with the Clearwater Police Department, responded to a house in the 1000 block of El Dorado Avenue for a medical-related call. It was discovered at that time Terry Bollea, also known as Hulk Hogan, was experiencing a serious medical-related issue. Personnel provided medical treatment at that time and transported Mr. Bollea to Morton Plant Hospital, where he died at 11:17 a.m. The Clearwater Police Department is conducting a death investigation, which is standard in these types of cases. There are no signs of foul play or suspicious activity related to this call for service at this time.
The police investigation that followed was thorough and comprehensive, as is standard procedure in cases involving high-profile individuals. Major Burnside was clear in his assessment. There are no signs of foul play or suspicious activity related to this call for service at this time. This statement would become crucial in the days that followed, as conspiracy theorists would later attempt to cast doubt on the circumstances surrounding Hogan's death. But what made this tragedy even more poignant was the context surrounding Hogan's final days. Just weeks before his death, the wrestling legend had been actively promoting his latest venture, Real American Freestyle, a new wrestling league that was scheduled to debut on August 30th, 2025. The timing of his death was particularly cruel, considering that Fox Nation had just announced their partnership with Real American Freestyle the very same day that Hogan passed away. What made the situation even more heartbreaking was that Hogan's manager, Chris Volo, confirmed that he died surrounded by loved ones, adding a deeply personal dimension to what had become a global news story. This detail would later become important as conspiracy theorists began to question every aspect of the official narrative. The immediate aftermath of the announcement saw an outpouring of grief and tributes from across the entertainment industry. But even before the tears could dry and the tributes could be fully processed, something strange began happening across social media platforms. Wrestling fans, accustomed to decades of storylines involving fake deaths, resurrections, and elaborate deceptions, began asking a question that would spark one of the most unusual conspiracy theories in recent memory. What if this is all just another work? To understand why this question resonated with so many people, we need to examine Hogan's recent activities and health status. Just months before his death, there had been rumors circulating about his health, with Florida radio host Bubba the Love Sponge claiming in June 2025 that Hogan was on his deathbed. However, these rumors were debunked by his representatives, who stated there were no reasons to panic and that his recent neck surgery had been successful. Even more compelling for conspiracy theorists was the fact that just days before his death, Hogan's manager Jimmy Hart denied health rumors, stating Hogan was doing phenomenal after a karaoke night with his son Nick. His wife, Sky Daly, also denied coma rumors, asserting his heart was strong after multiple operations. These recent health updates created a perfect storm of confusion and skepticism. How could someone who was reportedly doing phenomenal just days earlier suddenly die of cardiac arrest? For many fans, this dramatic shift seemed too convenient, too perfectly timed, and too reminiscent of the plot twists that had defined Hogan's wrestling career for decades.
How much pain are you in right now?
That's kind of funny because I had a physical therapist ask me yesterday, if you could be out of pain or you could have a perfect championship walk, what would you rather have? And I said, I'd rather have the walk. She goes, you're out of your mind. I said, yes, I am, because everything hurts just like it's hard to explain. Like if I'm going to brush my teeth and I'm leaning on the counter brushing my teeth, I can't push away.
This particular interview segment became crucial evidence for both sides of the debate. Conspiracy theorists pointed to Hogan's detailed discussion of his physical limitations and pain as evidence that he was setting up a narrative for his eventual death. Meanwhile, those accepting the official story saw it as heartbreaking evidence of a man whose body had been destroyed by decades of professional wrestling, making his eventual cardiac arrest all the more believable. The wrestling world has always been built on the concept of kayfabe, the presentation of staged events as real within the context of the show. For nearly 50 years, Hulk Hogan had been the master of this art form, blurring the lines between Terry Bollea the person and Hulk Hogan the character so effectively that even longtime fans sometimes forgot where one ended and the other began.
If you were backstage the night before your very first match, and this version of you walked in, the veteran Hulk Hogan walked in, and you could ask that version of you for some advice, what do you think he would say? What's the advice you would give to that Hulk Hogan as he was making his debut?
Well, first off, this version of me talking to the Hulk Hogan in 1977, having the first match, would not comprehend anything I would tell him. So I would just say, go out there and get in the ring as much as you can. You're going to have to earn your seat.
This reflective interview, where Hogan discussed his early career and the advice he would give to his younger self, took on an almost prophetic quality after his death. For conspiracy theorists, interviews like this became evidence of a man planning his exit strategy, carefully crafting a narrative that would allow him to disappear from public life while maintaining his legendary status. The birth of the Hogan hoax conspiracy. What we witnessed wasn't just the typical flood of grief and remembrance that usually accompanies the passing of a beloved celebrity. It was the birth of something far more complex, far more intriguing, and infinitely more controversial. A full-blown conspiracy theory suggesting that the Hulkster's death was nothing more than an elaborate hoax. The first seeds of doubt were planted almost immediately after the news broke, and they came from a place that might surprise many people: Hogan's own history with death hoaxes. As documented by Snopes.com, Hulk, Hogan had been the subject of false death reports before, including a 2015 hoax claiming he had committed suicide, which was thoroughly debunked when Hogan continued to make public appearances. This historical context provided conspiracy theorists with their first talking point. If it happened before, why couldn't it be happening again? But the real explosion of conspiracy theories began on social media platforms, where users started dissecting every detail of the official story with the intensity of forensic investigators. The platforms became breeding grounds for increasingly elaborate theories about what really happened on July 24, 2025. One of the most persistent theories suggested that Hogan's death might be nothing more than a publicity stunt for his new wrestling promotion, Real American Freestyle. This theory gained significant traction because it had a certain twisted logic to it. After all, what better way to generate massive publicity for a struggling wrestling promotion than to have its most famous commissioner die just weeks before the debut event? The timing aspect of this theory became even more compelling when conspiracy theorists noted that ticket sales for Real American Freestyle's inaugural event had been disappointingly slow, with only 380 tickets distributed out of a capacity of over 3,800 as of June 2025. For conspiracy theorists, this provided a perfect motive, a desperate attempt to save a failing business venture through the ultimate publicity stunt. Another theory that gained considerable traction suggested that Hogan's death was orchestrated by political forces. These theories played into broader conspiracy narratives about government cover-ups and political political assassinations, transforming Hogan's death from a medical tragedy into a supposed act of political warfare. Perhaps the most audacious theory involved wrestling terminology, suggesting that Hogan had used his infamous creative control clause to control even his own death narrative. This theory was particularly clever because it referenced Hogan's well-known contract clauses that gave him creative control over his wrestling storylines, suggesting that even death couldn't stop the Hulkster from controlling his own narrative. For instance, the theories about Hogan faking his death gained credibility among believers because of his well-documented history of health problems and recent surgery. In May 2025, Hogan had undergone neck surgery, which had sparked rumors about his declining health. Conspiracy theorists argued that this surgery provided the perfect cover story for his disappearance. He could claim to be recovering while actually planning his death and subsequent resurrection.
And the thing that stopped me, the thing that shut me down completely, where I said enough's enough, is when they hit me with the fentanyl stuff. They almost killed me with that stuff. So that's when I said, I'm done.
This candid discussion about Hogan's near-death experience with fentanyl became a focal point for conspiracy theorists. They argued that someone who had already died once from an overdose and survived would certainly be capable of staging his own death. The detailed medical knowledge he displayed in discussing his recovery process was seen as evidence that he understood exactly how to manipulate medical situations for dramatic effect.
I saw my ex-wife's teeth come out and talk to me. I saw a plastic squirt gun come out of her chest, and this is coming off the fentanyl.
The conspiracy theories were further fueled by Hogan's own reputation for embellishment and fabrication. Wrestling publications had documented numerous instances where Hogan had told stories that later proved to be false, including his claims about nearly joining Metallica and missing the call for the George Foreman grill endorsement. For conspiracy theorists, this history of creative storytelling provided all the evidence they needed that Hogan was capable of orchestrating an elaborate deception.
You missed the phone call.
I would pick
But they called you.
Let me explain.
This interview segment, where Hogan explained how he missed the opportunity to endorse the George Foreman grill, became crucial evidence for conspiracy theorists. They pointed to his detailed explanation of being at his children's school pickup as an example of how he could construct elaborate, believable stories to explain away inconsistencies in his narrative.
You didn't get the grill, but you got the blender. Tell us about the Hulk Hogan blender.
It was a little plastic blender with a battery in it, a AA battery. You'd put 6 ounces of water, 1 scoop of protein, and when you started, fart and stop.
The self-deprecating humor about his failed blender deal was reinterpreted by conspiracy theorists as evidence of Hogan's ability to laugh at his own deceptions and maintain a casual attitude toward truth and fiction. Even Hogan's discussion of his racism controversy was seized upon by conspiracy theorists as evidence of his acting ability. They argued that his emotional confession and apparent vulnerability were just another performance, demonstrating his skill at manipulating public perception and generating sympathy.
Oh my gosh, please forgive me. Please forgive me. I'm a nice guy. It's not, not the Hulk Hogan that rips the shirt off and bang, 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 slams giants.
This tearful apology, where Hogan pleaded for forgiveness from his fans, was reframed by conspiracy theorists as a masterclass in emotional manipulation. They argued that someone capable of such a convincing performance, of remorse and vulnerability, could certainly fake his own death convincingly. What's particularly fascinating about the Hogan death conspiracy theories is how they evolved and became more sophisticated over time. What started as simple expressions of disbelief quickly morphed into elaborate narratives involving multiple conspirators, complex motivations, and detailed explanations for every piece of evidence that contradicted the conspiracy theory.
John Cena's become a bad guy in the last few weeks. Some say bigger than when you did it. Do you agree with that?
I'll agree with whatever you say. I'm not here to argue, man.
This casual, almost dismissive response in what would turn out to be one of his final interviews was interpreted by conspiracy theorists as evidence of someone who was already mentally checking out of his public persona, preparing for his eventual disappearance from public life. The complex legacy of an American icon. While conspiracy theories continue to dominate social media discussions about Hulk Hogan's death, perhaps it's time we stepped away from the speculation and examined something far more substantial and meaningful: the incredibly complex legacy of one of America's most fascinating public figures. Because Terry Gene Bollea's story isn't just about wrestling moves and championship belts. It's a uniquely American tale of transformation, triumph, spectacular failure, and ultimate redemption that spans nearly 5 decades of our cultural history. Terry Bollea's journey began humbly in Augusta, Georgia, on August 11, 1953, but it was shaped by experiences that would have defined a lesser man as a failure. His early struggles with weight, confidence, and direction in life created the psychological foundation for what would become one of the most dramatic personal reinventions in entertainment history. But this transformation came at costs that became increasingly apparent as his life progressed.
I was very fat.
Very fat.
Never had a date in high school. Oh, stop it. No, we just ate junk and Baby Ruth bars and Pepsis and Cokes and stuff.
Right.
But like went to the beach, never took my shirt off.
Right.
So I said, I need to do something about this, brother.
See, so far you and I are on the same page.
This remarkably candid admission reveals the psychological roots of the Hulk Hogan persona. The vulnerability and insecurity he describes would become the driving force behind his relentless pursuit of physical perfection and public adoration. Hogan's professional wrestling career officially began in 1977, but it was his signing with the World Wrestling Federation in December 1983 that changed not just his life, but the entire landscape of American entertainment. His persona as the all-American hero helped usher in the 1980s professional wrestling boom, a cultural phenomenon that transformed wrestling from a regional curiosity into a global entertainment empire. The statistics of his wrestling success are staggering. He headlined 8 of the first 9 WrestleManias and won 12 world championships during his career. But these numbers only begin to capture his true impact on American culture. Hogan became the first wrestler to successfully cross over into mainstream entertainment, appearing in movies, television shows, and countless commercials. His catchphrases became part of the American lexicon, and his image was instantly recognizable around the world. The Hulkamania phenomenon represented something unprecedented in sports entertainment, a level of fan devotion that transcended age, race, and socioeconomic boundaries. Children wore his merchandise, adults quoted his catchphrases, and entire families gathered around television sets to watch his matches. For a brief shining moment in the 1980s, Hulk Hogan represented an uncomplicated vision of American heroism that resonated across cultural divides.
And then if you do stay in it, try to figure out a way to survive it, you know? Because as I moved along, even though everybody says this is a work, I had a target on my back the whole time. I mean, I had that spot for a long, long time. And, you know, I could hear what was being said good, I could hear what was being said bad. There was all kind of locker room stooges that are Hulk Hogan fans, a lot of locker room stooges that stir stuff up like the Hulkster, you know.
However, Hogan's story is far from a simple tale of triumph. His career and personal life were marked by controversies that revealed the complex, flawed human being behind the larger-than-life persona. These scandals, rather than being footnotes to his success, became defining elements of his legacy that complicated his place in American culture. The steroid allegations of the early 1990s were among the first major cracks in his heroic image. While Hogan was never charged, the association with the scandal damaged his reputation and contributed to his temporary departure from the WWF. This controversy highlighted the uncomfortable reality that the superhuman physiques that defined 1980s wrestling often came at significant personal and professional costs, but it was his involvement in a sex tape scandal and subsequent lawsuit against Gawker Media that would expose the most damaging aspects of his private life. The 2012 publication of excerpts from a secretly recorded 2006 sex tape not only violated his privacy, but ultimately led to the revelation of racist remarks that would nearly destroy his legacy entirely.
I'd bottomed out. I was having some problems with the marriage and financially and the kids, of course. And I was kind of mad at my daughter, and there was a weird situation where I said what I said, never should have said it, even though it was in a private setting.
The 2015 racism scandal represented the nadir of Hogan's public life. The leaked audio revealed him using racial slurs and making deeply offensive comments about African Americans, leading to his immediate termination from WWE and removal from the Hall of Fame. The phrase, "I bottomed out," suggests someone who understood that he had reached the absolute lowest point of his personal and professional existence. The consequences were swift and severe. WE terminated his contract, removed virtually all references to him from their programming and website, and distanced themselves from their former flagship star. Merchandise was pulled from stores, appearances were canceled, and the man who had once been the face of American heroism found himself a pariah in the industry he had helped create.
Oh my gosh, please forgive me. Please forgive me. I'm a nice guy. It's not, not the Hulk Hogan that rips the shirt off and bang, 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 slams giants.
This tearful public plea for forgiveness represents one of the most vulnerable moments in Hogan's public life. The distinction he makes between his private self and the Hulk Hogan character is crucial. He's asking for forgiveness not as a wrestling superhero, but as a flawed human being who has made inexcusable mistakes. The complexity of Hogan's legacy extends into his family relationships, which became increasingly complicated as his fame grew and his personal struggles intensified. His marriage to Sky Daly in 2023 represented hope for personal happiness in his later years, but this was complicated by ongoing family tensions, particularly with his daughter Brooke, who announced in March 2025 that she had no contact with her parents. The family dynamics that had once been celebrated on the reality show Hogan Knows Best had evolved into something far more complex and painful. The public nature of these family conflicts added another layer of scrutiny to an already complicated personal life, demonstrating how fame can both unite and divide families in unpredictable ways. Perhaps the most remarkable aspect of Hogan's later life was his genuine effort to earn forgiveness and rebuild his reputation through actions rather than just words. His eventual reinstatement to the WWE Hall of Fame in 2018 wasn't simply a corporate decision. It represented a recognition that people can change, that mistakes don't have to define an entire legacy, and that redemption is possible even for those who have fallen from the greatest heights.
The difference is when I turned to a bad guy, the fans were cheering me more than ever. So it was a little crazy. So I like to, see where this goes and how long he's going to run with it.
This reflection on his ability to maintain fan support even when playing a villain demonstrates his deep understanding of crowd psychology and entertainment. Hogan's involvement with Real American Freestyle in his final years represented more than just another business venture. It was his attempt to give back to the wrestling community that had given him everything. The fact that he was willing to take on the demanding role of commissioner for a startup wrestling league at age 71 speaks to a passion for the industry that remained undiminished despite his physical limitations and personal struggles. The timing of his death, coming just as Fox Nation announced their partnership with Real American Freestyle, adds a particularly poignant note to his story. He died not as a man looking backward with regret, but as someone still looking forward with hope and ambition for the future of wrestling. The conspiracy theories that have emerged since his death, while perhaps understandable given his larger-than-life persona, actually diminish the power of his real story. The actual Terry Bollea was far more interesting than any fictional narrative about fake deaths could ever be. His willingness to be vulnerable about his pain, honest about his mistakes, and generous toward his competitors reveals a depth of character that became increasingly evident in his later years. The man who died on July 24th, 2025, was not the cartoonish superhero of 1980s wrestling, nor was he simply the fallen figure caught in various scandals. He was a complex human being who had lived an extraordinary life, made both incredible achievements and terrible mistakes, and who had somehow found a way to make peace with all of it. Rest in peace, Terry Gene Bollea. Your legacy will be debated, analyzed, and reinterpreted for generations to come. But perhaps the most fitting tribute is to remember you not as a perfect hero or an irredeemable villain, but as what you ultimately became, a fully realized human being who lived an authentically human life with all the triumphs and failures that such a life entails. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed watching this video, click on one of the boxes playing on your screen to watch more similar content.